They were ghosts on the Wangan highway, an elite group of street racers who flew under the radar, literally and figuratively, while blasting past traffic at over 300 kilometers an hour. We're talking about the Midnight Club, one of the most legendary and secretive automotive collectives in Japanese street racing, heck, any street racing history. If you've heard rumors of Nissan Fairlady Zs, Porsche 911s, and RX-7s hitting triple-digit speeds in the dead of night around Tokyo, you have caught wind of their mythos. But how much of that is hype, and how much is true? Unlike the flamboyant drifting scenes or neon-lit car meets that pop up in anime and Hollywood flicks, the Midnight Club operated on a different level. They were disciplined, ultra-selective, and absolutely uncompromising about speed. See, these weren't your average backstreet hoons. Members were rumored to run fully built engines designed for top speed runs with power numbers easily clearing 600 horsepower. Way back in the 80s and 90s, when such numbers were almost entirely unheard of for a street car. These guys were quiet, they kept a low profile, and they refused to let wannabes tag along just for clout. Can you imagine this in 2025, right?
That's impossible!
So let's dig into the real story behind how they started, their ironclad rules, the epic battles on Tokyo's highways, and why they ultimately vanished. Because whether you're a JDM enthusiast, a fan of car culture, or just someone who accidentally clicked this video, the Midnight Club might just be the coolest story you never knew in detail. Now, the Wangan, and I'm gonna mispronounce the whole video, sorry.
Wangan,
or the Bayshore route of the Shuto Expressway, is a stretch of highway that loops around Tokyo Bay. It's relatively straight by Japanese freeway standards, meaning fewer tight corners and more opportunities for high-speed blasts. And by the late 1980s, certain speed junkies realized this was prime territory for top-end runs. Just the kind of environment to test the upper limits of Japanese performance machinery. And see, street racing wasn't new in Japan. Groups like the Kanjo-zoku in Osaka had been terrorizing urban loops in civics, and drifting circles were popping up in the mountains. But the Midnight Club, sometimes stylized Midnight Editor, put the logos here, was something else entirely. They formed around 1987, although accounts on that vary, with a mission that sounded deceptively simple: gather people obsessed with maximum velocity and push the boundaries of what's possible on public roads. They chose the Wangan route because it favored raw horsepower and aerodynamic finesse rather than drifting or short bursts. Now, one of the myths says that early members included wealthy enthusiasts, tuning shop owners, mechanics, people with the resources and the know-how to build bulletproof engines themselves. You had heavily modified Porsche 911s, Fairlady Zs, RX-7s, even the odd Skyline GTR, and all these were tuned to thrive at sustained high speeds, which was, and still is, terrifyingly dangerous on public highway. This was no free-for-all though. They established strict rules like unwavering anonymity, zero tolerance for unskilled driving, and a thorough vetting process for anyone who wanted to participate. You might drive with them for months before even being considered for membership. Break the code, and of course you were out. They had to keep authorities off of their backs too. Pulling stunts that ended in crashes or big headlines was considered anathema. The group needed to remain, of course, invisible. Yes, they called themselves the Midnight Club because they raced, well, you guessed it, in the dead of night when traffic was lighter or non-existent. But ironically, they also aimed for safety within their own extreme context. They typically scouted routes in advance, used spotters, and avoided weaving recklessly through traffic like amateurs. Their style was more akin to top-speed runs on open straights rather than, I don't know, doing donuts in an intersection. The stakes were insanely high. Nobody wanted to be that clown who caused a multi-car pyre at 200 miles an hour. And so, by the dawn of the 1990s, rumors were swirling that if you happened to stumble onto the Wangan at the wrong time, you might see a caravan of ridiculously fast cars flying by, leaving you in a slipstream of pure engine noise. The legend was then born. So I touched on the membership requirements, but here's the deal. The Midnight Club didn't hand out memberships like flyers at a car meet. The bar to get in was famously high. Some said you needed to be able to sustain 300 kilometers an hour, about 186 miles an hour, for a certain distance just to be in the running. Whether that was literally true or mythologized underscores their ethos. They only wanted the best. You had to prove not just raw horsepower, but also skill, discipline, and of course the budget to maintain a top speed monster. Now they also had a code of conduct. There was no bragging. You could not go around telling people, hey, I'm in the Midnight Club. Anonymity was crucial to them being able to continue their operations. No endangering of the public. Now street racing is of course inherently dangerous, but the Midnight Club tried to minimize risk. They avoided weaving through traffic or hitting busy roads at peak hours. There was no infighting. Rivalries were to be kept in check. The group valued unity over petty drama. And so breaking these 3 core rules, and there probably were more, right, could mean instant expulsion, or worse, you could be blacklisted in the broader scene. Because in Japan's tuner culture, reputation matters a lot. There's a fly flew into my eye just now.
Do you want to race?
The Midnight Club built a mystique around themselves, a secret society that only admitted the most capable and mature drivers. And that maturity part was of course key. These guys weren't blasting loud exhausts around local neighborhoods to show off. They saved it for the freeway in the hush of night, testing their new mods, testing aero, testing tires that wouldn't overheat, testing how well built the motor was, under the relentless strain of ultra high-speed runs. Was this a matter of pride? Was it a borderline death wish? What's hard to say, maybe both. But to them, it wasn't just about casual illegal racing. It was about mastering the art of top speed. They poured insane amounts of money in the builds. Engines were of course fully forged with the biggest turbo they could fit on there. ECU tuning was as good as they could get for the early 90s. Aerodynamics, of course, custom body kits, custom aero, whatever they needed to ensure that 300 kilometers an hour was not just a dream, but a nightly occurrence. One of the biggest draws of the Midnight Club's story is the rumored clashes or high-speed chases on the Wangan. Some claim that there were nights where rival groups or external racers from out of town would try to challenge them. The Midnight Club typically shrugged them off unless the challengers had proven they weren't reckless. If a random hot shot in a lightly tuned Supra showed up, guess what? They would typically get dusted, and fast. These guys weren't about humiliating newbies, they just didn't want to risk a blow-up that would draw police attention. However, there were, of course, rumored showdowns with other serious highway crews, like the infamous Bozoku bike gangs or local car clubs with similarly powerful machines. But those battles rarely ended in cataclysmic crashes or brawls. The real threat was always the possibility of a big accident at extreme speeds. This is foreshadowing something, by the way. The Midnight Club has a standing vow. If anything put public bystanders at risk, they would immediately bail. Now, in terms of hardware, the group boasted some insane top speed builds. It's not a lot known because they're secretive, but there we go. Porsche 93911 Turbo. There was one outfitted with a huge turbo setup that was actually sent to Germany to be built and then sent back. Pretty crazy setup. Now the vibe here, as far as their cars, was not the typical Fast and Furious lineup where everyone's redding and doing stuff for attention. It was more like a covert arms race. These guys quietly built these cars, they tested them, and then they unleashed them on the workden under moonlight. If a challenge arose, it was quick and decisive. Who can hold 300 plus kilometers an hour the longest without flinching? Now, I mentioned some foreshadowing, so let's get into it. All good things, or in this case, all insane and definitely illegal things, eventually come to an end.
Illegal only when police there. Police not there, Habibi, everything legal.
The Midnight Club's downfall is often pinned on one catastrophic event in 1999. Reports suggest that one night, a group of Bozoku bikers tried to antagonize or intercept the Midnight Club on the Wangan. A high-speed incident ensued, leading to a massive accident that allegedly involved multiple fatalities. Some stories say innocent bystanders were caught in the chaos, elevating it to a tragedy that no one in the group wanted on their conscience. There's of course debate on the exact details. Some say it was 6 fatalities, some say fewer. Official police statements were hushed, and the Midnight Club was well-versed in keeping their names off of the record. But the outcome was clear enough. The group collectively decided to disband. Their code of not endangering the public had finally been shattered in the worst possible way. In typical secret society fashion, they didn't go out with a grand announcement. They just kinda stopped showing up. Key members parted ways, the name vanished. If you asked around the tuner scene, you might hear whispers that the wreck was so traumatic that the founders felt they had no choice but to 86 the group. Because continuing after that, especially if innocent people were hurt, would have been an insult to their own code of honor. Some folks argue that the Midnight Club spirit never truly died, it just went underground. But as an organized entity with that name, it was over. The highways of Tokyo never quite saw that same level of coordinated high-speed obsession again. Over time, stricter policing and newer technology like highway cameras made sustained top-speed runs even riskier. So, yes, they soared to legendary status, but they also learned that street racing, no matter how disciplined, can and eventually will go horribly wrong. That final crash remains a stark reminder that the line between mastery and recklessness is, of course, razor thin. Now, even though the Midnight Club officially disbanded decades ago, their influence lingers. You'll see references pop up in manga, anime, racing games, any medium obsessed with Japanese tuning culture. The secrecy around membership, the extreme horsepower builds, and the code of honor all add up to a tale that almost feels too dramatic for real life. A few ex-members reportedly stayed active in the broader tuning world, building or racing under different guises. Some might have joined or formed new clubs, but none with the same mystique. It's also rumored that certain high-end Japanese workshops got their start through connections with or being a part of Midnight Club or their alumni, but that's never been confirmed. The group prided itself on anonymity, and even to this day, they have kept it its way. Today, YouTube is full of fan-made documentaries and social media chatter dissecting the group's history. Collectors will pay top dollar for authentic Midnight Club merchandise like stickers or license plate frames that occasionally surface, and guess what? Even the cars will come up here and there. Streetwear brands even try to use the name or references for underground clout, but the real Midnight Club was never about merchandising. They were about the thrill, the craftsmanship, and yes, the danger of pushing cars past their normal limits. In modern car culture, and especially in Western interpretations of Japanese street racing, the Midnight Club stands as the ultimate cool kids table. They weren't huge in numbers. Reports estimate anywhere from a dozen to maybe 30 core members at their peak, but their impact was enormous. They showed that a clandestine crew could unify around a single obsession, that be ultimate top speed, and remain disciplined enough to keep it going for years and years, until of course that tragedy finally struck. For enthusiasts today, hearing about the Midnight Club might inspire awe, curiosity, or even moral debates. Yes, they were racing illegally on public roads, but they also adhered to a very strict code of conduct, valued skill, and tried to minimize risk in a context where risk was inevitable. They poured serious engineering, especially for the time period, into their cars, pioneering some of the top speed setups that influence the broader tuning scene even today. If you've ever heard about Wangan builds, you're seeing echoes of Midnight's approach to aerodynamics, turbo setups, and high-speed stability. Now, on the flip side of things, the story is also a cautionary tale about how street racing can go horribly wrong, no matter how organized you think you are. The disbandment underscores that no matter how good of a driver you are, you can't control every variable on public roads. One night, one miscalculation, one outside factor, that's all it takes for a deadly disaster. Still, the Midnight Club's legend endures because it captured the rebellious spirit of Japanese car culture at a time when the scene was evolving. They were the hush-hush apex of speed, discipline, and exclusivity. And in a world where everything ends up on social media within seconds, their secrecy feels almost mythical by today's standards. So, that's the Midnight Club, a band of speed freaks who turned Tokyo's Wangan highway into their personal test track in the late 80s and 90s, only to vanish after a tragic incident forced them to confront the ultimate cost of their passion. Their story is part street racing legend, part cautionary tale, and wholly ingrained in the DNA of Japanese tuner lore. Whether you view them as outlaws, as innovators, as misguided thrill seekers, or as the pinnacle of racing, there's no denying that they left an indelible mark on car culture. The hush-hush membership, the rumored 300-kilometer benchmarks, and the code of respect shaped how future generations approach the highway scene. And, while we might never see Brute quite like them again, the whisper of their presence still lingers on every late-night high-speed run that people attempt in Tokyo. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed this one, if you want to see us cover other oddball topics like this, drop a comment down below with something that we should talk about. Thank you all so much for watching. Please hit the subscribe button. We get to keep making videos if you do that. Hit the like button if you liked it. I think there's a dislike button. Hit it if you didn't. Drop a comment down below if you're looking for wheels and tires. Go to our website, it's linked down below. Pick up wheels, tires, and amount of weight balance when we ship them to your door. And I'll see you in the next one.